Sift the flour with about 1/4 of the sugar. The flour provides starch and proteins that will contribute structure to the baked cake when the starch gelatinizes and when the proteins coagulate during baking. This sifting together removes any lumps in the flour and mixes some of the sugar and the flour together to make it easier to disperse the flour in the batter later. Separate the egg whites from the yolks. The egg whites contain proteins that will form a foam when we beat them. This foam provides much of the cake structure. The egg whites provide the only liquid for this cake. This liquid hydrates the flour and dissolves the sugar and salt, and during baking the liquid contributes to the gelatinization of the starch and produces steam that inflates the cake. Beat the whites with an electric mixer until they become foamy. Add the vanilla and almond extracts, the salt, and the cream of tartar. The vanilla, almond, and salt provide flavor. The cream of tartar is an acid that stabilizes the foam by lowering the pH of the egg whites, bringing them closer to their isoelectric point. Beat this mixture until the egg whites reach the soft peak stage. Scrape down the mixture at the sides of the bowl to help keep the whites uniform and have them remain uniformly mixed. Beat until soft peaks form. We will be adding the sugar next. The sugar protects the protein somewhat from denaturing and forming a stiff foam, so we want to have the foam well established before we begin adding the sugar. The sugar also provides sweetness, which together with the almond and vanilla extracts makes up the predominant flavor of this cake. When the foam has reached the soft peak stage, add the remaining sugar in 3 portions, beating enough to blend between each addition. Continue beating after the sugar is added until the foam reaches a stiff peak stage. This may take several minutes with the mixer on high speed. It's hard to overbeat this foam since the sugar protects the egg white proteins from over-denaturing. The foam is most stable at the stiff peak stage. We need the foam to be stable so it will hold up while we mix in the flour and the remaining sugar and while we bake the cake. Sift about 1/4 of the flour-sugar mixture over the foam and fold it into the foam with a rubber spatula. This folding technique minimizes the amount of damage to the foam as the flour is mixed into the egg whites. Add the rest of the flour in 3 more batches, folding after each. Fill a 50 milliliter beaker level full with batter. We will weigh this to determine the density of the batter. Try not to leave any large air spaces in the beaker. Place the batter into an ungreased pan and roughly smooth the top. We use an ungreased pan for this, so the cake will adhere to the edges of the pan after it is cooked, and we invert the pan to cool. Bake the cake for about 30 minutes. Remove the cake from the oven and immediately invert the pan on a couple of custard cups. Cooling the pan upside down helps prevent the cake from collapsing back on itself as it cools and as the steam condenses.
You will need to cut a sample of angel food cake for a compression test. The compression test measures the amount of force needed to compress the cake to about half its height. The sides of the cake have a tough crust that will require more force to compress than the inside of the cake, so the sample should come from the center of the cake rather than the edge. Once the cake has cooled, cut a 1-inch cube from the center of the cake. You will compare the results of this test for each angel food cake treatment, and because the size of the sample will affect the amount of force it takes to compress the cube, all students' samples need to be the same size. Use a serrated knife and a gentle sawing motion to cut the angel food cake without crushing it. Begin by removing the crust on one end of the cake. Use a ruler to measure and then cut a 1-inch slice. Next, lay the slice on its side and remove the crust from one end. Use the ruler to measure and then cut a 1-inch slice. Continue measuring and cutting until you have a cube of angel food cake that measures 1 inch on each side. Use this cube for the compression test. Record your results on the class data sheet for comparison to the angel food cake treatments made by other students.